لا تنكحوا من النساء ستة، لا تنكحوا من النساء ستة، لا أنانة ولا منانة ولا حنانة ولا حداقة ولا براقة ولا شداقة. الأنانة هي التي تكثر الأنين والتشكي وتعصب رأسها كل ساعة، فنكاح الممراضة أو نكاح المتمارضة لا خير فيه. والمنانة التي تمن على زوجها، تقول فعلت لأجل كذا وكذا، ضحيت لك 20 سنة. والحنانة التي تحن إلى زوج آخر أو ولدها من زوج آخر. والحداقة التي ترمي إلى كل شيء بحدقتها فتشتهيه وتكلف الزوج شراءه. والبراقة قالوا يحتمل معنيين، إما أن تكون في ليلها ونهارها أمام المرآة تصقل شفة بشرتها وتزين نفسها وتهمل واجباتها، أو أنها تغضب على الطعام فلا تأكل إلا وحدها. والشداقة المتشدقة الكثيرة الكلام.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, this Shaykh really got me thinking, and I wanted to do a video on what he said. He mentioned not marrying 6 types of women. Now, what I loved about this was that his list was something that I never heard before. You know, I've done a lot of research into this topic because I'm very curious. So many of us Americans are not taught to be good wives. You're taught to be MILFs. And I'm using MILF in the most derogatory sense. You're taught to just be hot, to be pornographic. You're not really taught to be wholesome. And maybe one day I'll compile a huge visual example. But then it would involve too much haram images. So that's kind of hard to do. So for now, I'll just be verbal about it. But the point is that he dug into a list of traits, and it really got me thinking, and I'm going to read those traits to you. I wrote them down. So the first one was Anahana. Ananaha. A-N-N-A-N-A-H. I don't speak Arabic, so I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it right. Alright? And for the first one, that is, don't pick a woman who constantly groans and complains. Now, what's fascinating about that is there's tons of women who think that by being a bitchy, high-maintenance woman, there's a lot of the Shira 7 sprinkle women who are like, no, you need to always be henpicking your man to death and complaining, and this is how you're going to make him change for you and bend him to your will. And I've shared in the past, RFH, the Radfem on X, saying that men like women who nag. I mean, and she's a divorced woman, and she's quite bitter and insane, and a misandrist, I believe the word is called. So she shouldn't be giving advice to anybody. But the point is I can recall countless women telling others that they should be toxic like that. They should always be unsatisfied, always complaining, and always making a man jump through hoops, and that this will build his desire for you, and that you should not be his piece. I've literally seen these reels on Instagram that tell women, don't be your man's piece, and that's not your job, and that men like toxic women. So for many of you who don't have an insane culture of degeneracy, this is common sense. But in America, the most meanest, cruelest, vindictive, clawing in the back type of women are giving advice online to the younger generations. And so I come across these reels without even searching for them. I just go on my homepage, I want to look at pictures of mountains and sushi, and the algorithm feeds me this, and so I think it has an agenda. So I've talked about in the past that through studying hadith, I have learned a lot about gratitude. If you recall the hadith, it tells women that even if you were to be given the hoofs of some sheep, that you shouldn't look down upon that gift, right? And that you should be a good neighbor, and that we're to have gratitude. And if you think about in the Quran when it says, which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? This can get you thinking. If you recall, I had a couple videos where I talked about what a good wife is, and I mentioned appreciation of clean water. Because if you ever had building maintenance, they turn your water off for 2 or 3 hours, suddenly your toilet doesn't work, and you can't brush your teeth, there's no water to wash your hands, you realize, oh snap, having potable water is a blessing that we have today that people didn't have for so many years. And hot water on demand to take a shower. That's a blessing. And when you're washing your newborn baby, you know, or your little tots are swimming in the swimming pool, you realize, wow, you know, water really is a blessing. And so having somebody who has a gratitude mindset and is thankful consistently and isn't always trying to keep up with the Joneses and materialistic, drowning in junk, this will help you as a man to have more mental peace, and as a woman, for you to not become a greedy, nasty, snarky, gold digger woman who thinks she's a goddess and the main character of everything. Right? It doesn't mean you should have zero standards. It just means that you don't overestimate your own worth, and you don't become ungrateful, and that you don't think that's permanent, because change always occurs. Allah can raise and lower whom He wills. So, being stuck with someone who's always complaining is terrible. Really is. I mean, if you ever had somebody who you're traveling with and it's just bitching and moaning, it takes away the fun of it. Now, there's nothing wrong if you're like, man, this is tough. Like you're climbing, hiking or something, or oh, my feet hurt, I need to take a rest. Like, these are natural. But if they're like, mosquito bit me, this is hot, why did we come here, are we there yet? Like, just someone who is just draining the energy out of every situation. You can never really feel rejuvenated. So I found that to be quite clever. Now, for 2, it was Mannanah. M-A-N-N-A-N-A-H. These are hard words. And this is someone who reminds her husband of favors. And I was like, oh snap. You know, don't rub it in your face like I did this for you. And the Shaykh mentioned specifically a woman who says, like, I gave you 20 years of my life. Like, that is a hard one, because we women keep tabs. And I do that. I have a bank of, it's like I don't do it on purpose. Like, I'm not using it as an insurance policy, but I can't help but remember, like, everything I've done. It's not that I'm keeping score to be like, I got you. But when you're arguing with someone, it's like, all that memory comes back. And it's, you know, like, not to use that in an argument is hard, you know, because you feel like you're owed, but you also feel like, oh, you should be treating me this way because I did X, Y, and Z, you know, or don't you remember when I did this, so why can't you do this for me, you know? It's almost like you're becoming a persuasive lawyer or something like that, right? And so when he mentioned that, I was like, oh snap. Because sometimes I think a lot of us women feel if we don't remind that person what we've done for them, they may have forgotten, and if you remind them, that they'll like rectify their affairs and reform their conduct and have more respectful tones. Because some people, it's almost like they do forget everything you've done for them, and then they demand more, or they're ungrateful, and you're like, don't you remember X, Y, and Z? So it seems like, you know, it can come in handy at certain times, but in other contexts, if you bring it up, it's like you ruin the sweetness of it. See what I mean? And the third one was Hanana. Hanana. Okay? And that one says, the one who longs for another husband or for her child from another husband. I think what he meant, I wasn't sure if he meant like wish her children were from a different man, or that she's remarried and she wants her kids from her previous marriage around or something. I was a little confused on that part. But the one who longs for another husband, that's intense. That's an intense one, because when you start to feel miserable in your relationship and you're stuck as a woman, you can't afford to leave him, and you're going through a rough patch, and he may be rude and terrible, and you're just like, man, I wish I had a different husband, man. I wish I had someone who was more like this or more like that. That is a very common thing. Very common. And it would be cool if he could give advice on how you get rid of that feeling. But I do know that there's different ways that comes about. So if someone was cheaper, like your ex was more generous, now you're with someone who's cheap, you're like, man, I don't really like this. Or if someone was better in bed, you're like, this sucks. Or if someone was more polite and the person you're with now is more of an asshole. Or if someone was more cleaner in the past and your husband is less clean with his personal hygiene, or he's letting himself go, this can be a problem. You see, there's like, you can see how that desire rises up. And that is something that I found to be quite interesting. So the question I would pose to the Shaykh if I was in person, I would say, well, how can a husband make it so that his wife doesn't long for another man? How should she communicate those needs? So if a wife is longing for someone, how can she communicate to her husband to say, hey, could you do this? So that they can repair their relationship and erase that desire. So sort of patch up the holes that are forming in their relationship and their bond, right? And money has been cited as a cause of many divorces, right? But if you're not materialistic, but you want someone who's more communicative, or, you know, some women, their husband's too vanilla in bed, others, he's too infrequent, or finishes too fast, or he never does an act of kindness, or you know, there's so many things that can make a woman want to check out of the relationship. Men too, but this video was about wives. And so when a woman, for example, says, I wish my kids were from another man, I wish I could have my kids, but I wish their dad was someone different, that's a person in a lot of pain. That's a person in a lot of pain, because that means that the guy has really done screwed up. I've never really heard of a woman wishing her man, the father of her children, was from a different man, unless he's done something that is like really turned her off, and he doesn't really even care or acknowledge that the bond is fraying. Because I do think that there are some men in the world who don't realize that the bond is slipping, and they're so absorbed in their work or hobbies, something else, that they don't realize they're losing their wife. So I think it's important for men to realize, hey, you want to make sure you're keeping that romantic bond tight. The fourth one was Hadaka. That was cast her glance at everything, then desires it and burns the husband to buy it. I've mentioned in the past, without naming the feministic, occultic cult of the Shira 7 Sprinkle ladies, but I did make a video called Are You Drowning in Junk? And it was in reference to her. And when you listen to because there are different types of feminists. The gold digger feminists, they're a particular brand that feel that love is shown through material items. And that a provider is someone who spends on you willy-nilly, and that you should only pick men of a certain status so that they can fund your lifestyle, so you can get more useless junk. More shoes, more purses that are going to end up in the landfill when you die. 20 bottles of perfume. I mean, like, they measure love in physical objects. And they often say, be with a man for his money. It's not, liking him isn't as important. His looks are not important. It's what he can buy you, how he can fund your lifestyle. And it's a sort of vapidity there. And so, when you have a shopping addiction, and you expect to have an extravagant princess ethos, this can really burden your husband. And if you recall the hadith that we've read about making sure you avoid debt and don't die with debt, and the whole conversations around debt in Islam, you can see it's not a joke. And so you don't want your husband to be like, well, I have to buy this stuff in order to keep her. Now, I will say a personal story, because I was, for example, I had an ex who would buy stuff all the time for me, and I wasn't really used to that. Bought a stereo, back in the day when stereos were popular, lots of gift giving, and at first I was like, I don't really understand what this is. I would be happy with just get a bag of groceries, to be honest. A little Chinese food here and there. It's more, I was more about the mental connection. Later on, I discovered he went into credit card debt, and he blamed me and said, well, I thought you'd leave me if you knew I didn't have a lot of money. So I was buying stuff on credit cards in order to, make you feel like I had money. And I looked at him and was really shocked, because it's a form of lying, in my opinion. I didn't choose this person because I thought they had money. It was mostly about their unique style and looks. And, wanting to have the mental connection. Okay? And I found that to be like, okay, strange. But the past women he was with had demanded this type of gift giving. Like, I see something I want it. Our very first date, if I recall, we were to San Francisco, and there used to be this shopping mall there. I don't know if it's there anymore. And I was looking at stuff. I didn't have any money. I was very tight money. And I'm like, I don't really get what's the point. Like, he was trying to take me shopping, and I'm just like, oh man, I don't really need anything. I don't really want anything. And I know what this means. If someone buys you something, they expect intimacy. And I don't want to do that. I don't really know this person that well. It's just our first date. I didn't like that, because if you get into the sugar baby relationship, if you do shenanigans like that, and that was not my mode. And so I didn't like how that was a consistent pattern of, I'll take you shopping, buy something you want, if you see it, buy it. That's just not my style. I'm more of a minimalist. Good Chinese food, good sushi. Fine with going hiking, coffee day, go to the zoo, go to the museum. I'm not into the whole, like, gold digger, gotta get out the American Express card. And so, it wasn't a match. And when the Shaykh mentioned that, I thought, oh, wow, if you're the opposite type of woman and you get somebody who thinks that they can kind of buy your love, buy your affection, it's a very awkward feeling. And it's a very cheap feeling. And so, some women, they want to have, like, okay, buy me this, buy me that, because they don't really value what they have, and it's always they have to have something else. And before you know it, when these people are older, they're hoarders. They just got a bunch of stuff that they don't use. And then you're like, it just piles up. I'll give you another example. why I think this is a good thing. Number 4, because if you get fleas, bed bugs, cockroaches, some type of pest infestation, chinches, we call the bed bugs chinches here in Spanish, you gotta wrap they're so easy to get in your place, especially if you have cats and dogs. It's another good reason to keep them damn animals outside sometimes. But you gotta wash all those blankets. You gotta wipe down all the furniture. You gotta, it's so much work to kill the eggs and vacuum and put pesticides, and it's hard, and your body's itching because the bugs is all biting you. And sometimes these bugs, man, they live through the apocalypse. They're just fucking, sorry, excuse me, shouldn't swear. They're just freaking strong. Okay? And the more junk you have, the more places they can hide. And then the more stuff you have to clean. Right? If you're more minimalistic and there's more space and gaps and openness, it doesn't look like you're living in a store. You know what I mean? Like, some people have so much stuff, it's like they're living in their own warehouse. Their home doesn't look like a home, it looks like a warehouse. They got so much stuff. And bugs, spiders, you name it, they hide in that. So many crooks and crannies for them. And so you're like, man, this is too much. So you had to think about that. When you buy all this crap, you're like welcoming bugs and putting more burden upon yourself. I would also argue that if a woman needs you to like spend and spend and spend in order to prove your love, you're not enough. You yourself aren't enough for her. Because when a woman really likes you, not that she doesn't have standards, like, yeah, you need to pay rent, you need to pay the bills, no problem. But the little things go farther. Your affection, your intimacy, these go a lot farther. When someone's detached and ice cold towards you, that's when they demand the monetary aspect more. And I remember, I can't think of it now, but there was a Ben Stiller and Jack Black did a movie where Jack Black's character invented a poo be gone spray. He gets really rich, and his best friend Ben Stiller gets jealous of him, and he gets all this money. And then there was a scene where the wife, she starts to change once she thinks her husband, who's Ben Stiller, is gonna get some money. And she gets more excited towards him because now he has money to buy her stuff. And that moral in that moment of that scene is that women get more hot and bothered and are more desired for you if you spend on them. You can't put out the money, they're gonna put out for you. That money makes a woman wet. And I recall seeing a reel on Instagram where a black guy, he said that if you start paying more bills and providing more for your woman, she'll put out for more you in the bedroom. And there's some truth to that. But I think that there's a balance of what's enough. Right? And so as a woman, I think you have to sit down and say, what is reasonable, what is rational, what is intelligent. Okay, how can you be smart with money? Because men are really good at budgeting money more than women. I'd argue if you look at how women take 2 years on average longer to pay back their student loans than men, you can see some really interesting studies about spending habits of men and women. And I've seen a lot of complaints from men online about their wives keep having Amazon packages show up. And I also see reels where women themselves, like their husband will be on the couch like, oh my gosh, how are we going to afford all this? And then it says my wife living her best life, and it has her like directing the delivery guy to put the packages over here or there. That the wife is still spending money even though the family's in debt and the husband's worried. So I've seen reels of women pointing out how they still keep spending even though the man is like, we don't have it. And My husband taught me a lot about that, because I'd be like, can I have this? I want this. He's like, we don't have it. And I would get upset in the beginning, like, but I want it and I need it. And I had to learn the difference between need and want, and being told no. My step-grandpa was good at saying no. He said no more than he said yes. But he was really into budgeting. But I remember the hadiths that talk about, not being a miser, and that it's like a form of charity to spend on your family, and that if you have charity to give, you take care of your family, right? And, spend on your family. So don't be overly cheap with your family. So there's a balance. But there's so much you can look at just with what that Shaykh said. But, again, a woman needs to control her materialistic desires. And that's hard because America has also the fast fashion industry where, wear this and then toss it out, and then get the newest fashion trend, toss it out. I remember in the Netflix show The Empress, I believe that's the name, a show with the Austrian Empire. The queen would, she wasn't wasteful, but the lady who, like the leader of the maids or the leader of the servants, she would have the queen wear a pair of shoes, and then when she's done with those shoes, she would get rid of them and get new shoes. So they're very wasteful. What was the point? That they don't wear the same dress until it runs dry. It's always wear and then throw away, wear then throw away. Fast fashion, right? A sort of excess, a materialistic excess of ostentatious glamour. And we see this a lot with the galas and the red carpet events and other things like that. And we do see a lot of women saying, oh, I went to Dubai. They're really escorts, by the way. They don't mention that, but you can tell. And, oh, he bought me this necklace, he bought me this. And then women get jealous and they look at their husband and think, he can't buy me this, but he's literally coming home every night. He's sober. Buying groceries, what really matters. But the escorts who are pretending they're girlfriends, but they're really escorts, and they're only being rented, they're like, I got these shoes, I got this. But that's not real wealth. That's not real bounty. And even if you try to resell those items on eBay, you're not going to get as much. So be careful. And when your house is on fire, all that stuff's going to get burnt up. All that money is gone. Flood comes, takes it all away, ruins it. You get fleas, you got to wash all that stuff. Bed bugs, you got to wash all that stuff. How much it costs per wash and dry load takes time. The more crap you have, the more stuff you got to clean. So I really thought deeply about number 4, and I hope you do as well. 5, Baraka. And that says, cast her glance. Oh, wait. Sorry. 5. 5 and 5 was spends night and day in front of the mirror and neglects her duties, gets angry around food, and eats alone. Now, the mirror part. I've heard a lot of gold diggers talk about how you gotta always be dolled up, and you do see men complaining about their wives not being super dolled up. Then I think about wudu. If you have to get your face wet. If you got mascara, eyeshadow, blush, lip gloss, and you get your face wet 5 times a day, you're always fixing your makeup, it doesn't seem to really work. And then I've been doing a lot of looking at before and after of some of these women who use a lot of makeup, and then they use an AI filter. And you're like, these are almost like, they're not real people. These are like AI. They use so much makeup and plastic surgery that they're not really who they are. And some women look incredibly different without their makeup. And you're like, this is crazy. So men might be seeing these heavily make-upped women online, looking at their plain wife, and their plain wife, their libido goes down. And they think they want a chick like that. But I would argue, okay, you got to shower, to dry your hair, then to do your mascara and your foundation, all that stuff. That's a lot of time. Now, that's at least 2 hours a day. Just bare minimum. And think about how many hours you have in a day as a mom. To read, to pray, to clean, to work, whatever you're doing. This is intense. And I think about the Italian supermodels who have more of a all-natural look. And even some of the hippie girls who are just natural. They have this sort of comfortability in their own skin. And then I recall seeing a tweet like a year ago that said, oh, a black woman said that women who don't wear makeup are lesbians. I was like, well, that's far-reaching. But then again, women will get these spider eyelashes. They draw their eyebrows on, wear contacts, lip gloss, so much makeup, and you're like, what is going on here? That's a lot of money. And then they say, their nails are super long. It's like a status thing of like, I don't have to work, I don't have to do anything. And it's not really practical. And if you can't fund that woman's habits, she's gonna leave you. It's not really sustainable. It's weird, it's creepy. And so, I think if a woman is more natural and plain, she gets in the shower, she gets out, she's always like fresh and clean. Plain doesn't mean like dank. Doesn't mean crusty. I've noticed actually that the more natural women who can take 2-3 showers a day, they don't got to spend time with the makeup. Whereas women who wear a lot of makeup sleep with it on, and they don't wash their hair as much. They use dry shampoo. You notice that they're more dirty because they don't want to have to reapply their makeup on, so they shower less than someone who wears less makeup. I've noticed this phenomenon more and more over time. And yet people will think that the one who has a lot of makeup is the cleaner one. That's not the case. It's quite fascinating when you look at it, because they don't want to look at their reflection in the mirror without the makeup, and they like the attention they get when they have all the makeup, so they're incentivized to keep that makeup on all the time and not wash their face and the rest of their body. Whereas someone who's like, they can go take a dip in the ocean, and their their wig ain't coming off. They don't have any weave to worry about. They're more raw, real, and natural, and closer to true femininity, in my opinion. Now, the beauty pageant queens, like, okay, yes, some of them are really pretty, but if you took all the makeup and the hair away, you wonder, can you still be desired to them? And then this comes with erectile dysfunction of the AI models. So, for example, men are perceiving AI women now, who are always perfect, and losing desire for actual real women. This is causing erectile dysfunction. And this makes a lot of women think that they always have to have makeup on and spend all their money on makeup in order to look really good, so that their husband doesn't have erectile dysfunction. Because he's always seeing endless pictures of perfect women who have filters and AI. And so, I think it's important for men to lower their gaze and remember that the men of the past with higher testosterone levels, they didn't have to have all these medications in order to make their body work, and they could see a woman, smell a woman, and appreciate a real woman without having to look at adult entertainment first before they engage in intimacy. And they were able to be more in tune with their testosterone and their libido. And so number 5, which talking about don't pick a woman who is like night and day in front of the mirror, that's a very potent one, because some men think in order to have the 10, they have to be able to they have to stand around while she gets ready forever. This isn't practical, and those women suffer a lot after postpartum depression, because they don't like the way their body looks, and then they have a very low self-esteem when they don't look like a Barbie. And these women can harm a baby, shake a baby. They will resent their husbands and be like, why did you do to my body? I want to give the baby to the daycare because I want to look like a Barbie. They don't embrace the motherly role as much because they can't be getting dolled up in front of the mirror. And this creates a sort of resentment and tension in the relationship. So I found this to be very unique, because it's rare to see a man say that. Okay, now the last one was shaddaqa. And that was a verbose, excessively talkative. A chatterbox. And what's interesting about that is I'm more quiet and stoic. I make videos and stuff. But in a public setting, I'm more reserved more and more. But there was a time where women are kind of taught, oh, you have to be the life of the party. You have to be in the spotlight. You have to draw attention to yourself. And then that'll attract the man. And so that's why you see some women get really loud in groups, laugh really loud. They clap their hands. They're always trying to make a noise so that people look at them. Because some women are told you have to be rambunctious and you have to be a chatterbox and excessively talkative and verbose in order to get the man to notice you. But then you'll see men say, like, no, the shy girl is actually more desirable because she isn't, saucing up, rizzing up, as the young people say, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. And this is important because that's something that not a lot of us realize. That's a unique one. And if your wife is always blabbing to like someone in the grocery store, you're standing there, we gotta go. If she's always trying to get in people's business and be gossipy, that can be a problem as well. So I can definitely see how being with someone who knows how to moderate their speech effectively creates more peace and harmony in the relationship. So this Shaykh, subhanallah, just to reiterate what we talked about, he said, don't pick a woman who's constantly complaining and groaning, who reminds you of the favors you've done for her. Don't pick someone who will switch up on you and want someone else beside you. Don't select a woman who casts her glance at everything and then wants you to buy it. So she's like, buy me this, buy me that, buy me that. She's just all over the freaking place. Okay? And then you surely don't want to have somebody who doesn't like eating with you and is always up in the mirror being very vain and pretentious and being like the myth of Narcissus. Narcissus stared at his own reflection in the water until he died. That Greek mythos. So having someone who isn't like freaking out over every single imperfection and not having a chatterbox. Very interesting. Very interesting. I really enjoyed this list, and it made me think about quite a lot, and how America promotes women to behave this way, and how most of the female influencers online tell women to be just like the things that this Shaykh said not to be. And then women will say, where are all the good men at? Why am I not being picked? And then they'll say, we don't care what men think. So do you want to have a relationship or not? And yet those same women will say, well, men have to listen to women. They have to figure out what we want in order for us to be with them. But then those same women don't want to hear what men want. You see what I'm saying? And so I really enjoy hearing some things that what men to say they want. Now, I know there'll be someone who says, men will say they want one thing, they'll have their wife in the house and then cheat with the exact opposite of the woman they said they wanted. That is true, some do that, and may Allah protect us. But that doesn't mean that one behavior isn't superior to the other. Okay? And we should all strive to be the best women we can be. And we should ignore the occultic gold diggers because they get passed around and they use men in a way that is unnatural. And if you want something more lasting, you need to know the balance. And that's what I really enjoyed about this list. Let me know what you think about it. Please like, comment, subscribe, join the blog, and have a great rest of your day.